Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Willis Wit and Wisdom. My name is Eric Willis,
And I'm Bob Willis.
and we are here to answer questions about life and loss and leadership and conflict. So basically, if you have any questions, we're up to trying to answer them or point you in directions to resources, to people and places that can. So
Mhm.
we don't have all the answers, but we'll attempt to take a look at any question.
Right. Yeah. That's the key. You don't have to have all the answers if you just kind of know where to direct people and guide them.
Mm.
That's what to do. Resources. We call that resources.
And that's why we're here. So
Mhm.
today, there is a process that Dad, you're going to share with us. That it's really a key process in coming alongside people. So give us a little clarity on what I'm talking about there.
Yeah. What we're talking about is being able to be present with people as they're sharing with you. It doesn't matter if it's someone at the grocery store or someone in a hospital setting, wherever it might be, or at the gas station. It doesn't matter. If someone has a story they want to share with you, how do we be present with them? What's the best way? And I wrote a little, what I call an acrostic. Each letter, the first word, stands for something. The acrostic of listening with prayer, the Prayer. And each one of those letters will stand for something. And I'm going to share a little bit of that. We'll talk about it, think about how to be present, because the very first letter of prayer is P, and that stands for presence, being present with someone, being there with them so that they know that, okay, you're making eye contact with me, you're not distracted, but you're present with me. That's really important when someone wants to share and talk about things that are going on, because maybe been in situations where we went to tell someone something and they were looking around and you're thinking, man, I'm not getting my message across.
Mhm.
We can walk away feeling like I wasn't heard. I was not heard. That is one of the messages I think across America that needs to be heard now, that people realize that they need to talk with someone who's going to hear them. That way we feel like we've been able to express our feelings, but there's give and take in that. If I'm going to hear you, I think it's also fitting that you hear me also. So that presence part is really important.
So the
And
presence piece, being physically present is one thing where you can actually
mhm.
read the body language of the other person. You can give that eye contact. You can be there and nod your head, so the other person knows you're there. What if it's a telephone call, um, or you don't have line of sight as you're
Mhm.
engaging someone? Um,
Right. The very next letter, R, as you were spelling the word prayer, PR,
mhm.
that R is to restate. So if someone over the phone says, I'm having a hard time sleeping at night, then we can restate that, take their words and come back with them to make sure we understand it. In other words, clarify, what do you mean you're not able to sleep at night? No sleep? Are you sleeping in the daytime? What's going on with you? What's kind of a pattern? So if we restate that to them, they'll say, hey, they heard what I said. I wasn't sleeping, because it gives me a chance to clarify it a little bit. So even over the phone, we can do that, not just in person, but kind of summarize their words and
Yeah,
restate it. And they'll correct us if we're wrong. Believe
right.
me, they'll correct us. If we come up with something, we say, well, what I'm hearing you say is, and we fill that in, and they might say, no, that's not it. What I really meant was. And
Yes.
so restating is a very important step too, to make sure we're hearing it correctly. Okay.
Yeah,
Very
and that
important.
it's so important to restate that, because and when I restate things, I never restate verbatim exactly what
Right,
they said back to me.
right.
I synthesize what I hear, and then I feed back to them something similar,
Mhm.
because that helps me get a sense of a deeper connection, and
Exactly.
it helps me
Yeah,
keep my fingers on their pulse of how they're doing. So
right,
restating isn't a verbatim word for word saying back to them what they said to you.
right. Yeah,
It's
it's not
you.
time to be parroting.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah,
it's reframing what they're saying in a context that uh, Actually, when someone corrects me, when I restate, that's not a mistake on my part. That's
Right.
actually positive because
Yeah.
it causes them to solidify and clarify for themselves what they actually mean.
Right. That's both of you working together to paint the picture, is what that is. Yeah. And the A in the word prayer, PRA, is to ask. So we can ask questions. What I've learned, though, Eric, is instead of asking questions where the person can respond yes or no, then the conversation stops, we would ask open-ended questions about how does this make you feel? What kind of feelings were you going through at the time? What was stirring within you? And to give them an opportunity to put more than just one word to it. Because the closed-ended questions, you're going to find yourself, the conversation can be very, very short because they'll say, no,
Yeah, done.
that's it.
Yeah.
Done. So we need to move on. So I think that ask part is to be able to ask for clarification, ask some questions, help me understand what you're saying. Let them put words to it.
And if you know the person and if you know them well enough to know whether or not they're a feeling oriented person or a thought oriented person, that they
Mhm.
kind of speak language that way. So tailor your questions to be open ended. How does that make you feel? The feeling person is all over that because they're in tune
Right,
and in touch with their feelings.
right, right.
But what thought process did you go through when this happened? Um,
Mhm.
for those individuals that aren't necessarily feeling oriented, but they're more cognitive in the way that they process.
Yeah, meet them on their ground there. Yeah. So it's presence, restate, and ask, and then the why portion is to yield. In
Mhm.
other words, this time is not about us. We need to yield the conversation to them. That's really making that person a priority. In fact, that is pretty good terminology to use and let them know that the most important thing in my life right now is the time we have right here. You're the priority. So what is it that I need to hear from you? Tell me about that. That's yielding. It's not saying that, this isn't the time to tell them about our losses.
Right.
Yeah, it isn't about me. It's about you. So we yield to that. Sometimes that has to be learned, practice, and learn that to see. Okay, we reflect about the conversation we had and realize, okay, I could have done better on that.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah.
next time I will give more time to that person.
Yeah. And the yielding piece, when we're in conversation with someone who's grieving, there's going to be a connection at some level because we ourselves are grievers. And so
Right.
the difficulty comes in biting our tongue and not saying, well, yeah, my my relative had that same thing happen, and this is,
Yeah.
and we start to
Yeah.
tell our story. So the challenge would be, um, don't share your story unless invited to do so. That would be the
Hmm.
rule of thumb. If
Right.
they ask,
Yep.
then share, but don't share without them inviting you to do so.
Right. Right. Because it isn't about us. It's that yielding part to them. And in the word prayer, the next letter of prayer is E. So that's empathize. Walk with them, feel with them, not just walk with them, but feel with them. So they will know because of what we've asked and what we've repeated back to them, the way we summarize their statements. They realize that they've actually been heard. We're walking with them. So I do think that that's an important part that everyone feels heard, not just listened to, but heard. That's
Yeah.
an important part. We all need that. We
Yeah.
all need that.
And
Yeah.
that ties directly back to presence. Sometimes the most
Hmm.
empathetic thing you can do is just be there. So
Exactly. That's
words
it.
aren't required.
Yeah, that's right. And because if we walk with them, it is our presence that we're giving to them. Because what I find, especially after a loss, the grievers in shock and they're numb. They're not hearing what we have to say. They will not remember what we say, but they will remember that we were there.
Yeah.
They will remember how we made them feel. And so that's the important part. The last letter in the word prayer is the R. That stands to resist. And we need to resist the urge to change the subject.
Mm,
We need. I can recall early in my ministry, I received a call in the middle of the night. I need to be at the hospital or something, a tragedy. And I remember driving to the hospital. It was probably about a 30-minute drive. And it seemed like the closer I got, the slower I was driving. And I became aware of that. And I realized, taking a little inventory, because I wasn't confident on what to do when I got there. So it's almost like a barrier I had to drive through and get there. And so I'm glad I continued, because it allowed me to get that comfort level. It was part of a learning process, but we had to resist the urge to run from it. And I looked back and realized I was constantly aware. I was laying up on the field. I just wasn't in a hurry, and I needed to be there. And so we may find that same thing when we're meeting with someone who's had a loss, that we almost resist being there. And we need to work through that and pray about it, make sure God is leading us to bring our heart to that person and to be present with them. But that resistance, because there can be a tendency to want to cut the conversation off and leave. Well, that's more about our comfort level that we need to evaluate.
And that's where awkward pauses come into play in conversation, and there's this silence that happens. And I've always struggled with that awkwardness until I came to the realization that just because there's silence doesn't mean that there's not something going on in the heart of an individual. And so sometimes, silence is the best in that moment.
Right. Because especially as a griever, because their mind is working slower, their thought process is working slower, it takes longer to formulate things. I remember, in fact, a Lutheran minister told me that in his training in seminary, they talked about that silence portion. They said, when you ask a question and it seems like it's taking forever for them to answer, don't jump in with another question. And he said, they taught us that within our own self, repeat the Lord's Prayer 3 times.
Oh, I love that.
That would give time. That would give time to take up that silence, but it's thinking about what we were doing and giving that time, that person time to put their thoughts together and not rush into it with another question. So it isn't about us. And it allows us to take time for ourselves.
Well, I love that acrostic that you shared, prayer. And obviously we're going to ask people to watch this again and make sure they pick up on all those nuggets that you shared.
Right. Sure. In fact, I'd like to give my email address of rwillis14@cox.net. If you'd like a copy of that, you can email me and I'll zip you a copy of that page, that acrostic that will kind of give you something to ponder. Okay. But rwillis14@cox.net.
Yeah. And has that actually been published in one of your books?
It has been published in one of my books. Yes, it has been. The grief book. Yes.
Okay. All right. And the title of that book?
Is A Guide for Grievers. A Guide for Grievers by Bob Willis.
And
I carry those Amazon. Yeah, you can do them on Amazon. Some people are resisting Amazon, but I say, hey, Amazon's my tool for ministry. So let's keep using that. Come on.
Absolutely. So Dad, thanks for sharing that today. And folks, we want this to be a blessing to you and to those in your life. And so feel free to share this with anyone that you think would benefit from it. If you've benefited from this, we'd love for you to subscribe to this channel and continue to follow Willis Wit and Wisdom. And you can find me at reclaimleadership.org and connect with me through that ministry. And Dad already gave you his email address. Send him a question or two. We'd love to answer that, or at least attempt it here.
Direct it, yes.
Yeah. Dad, thank you for your time. Love you. And we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Love you. Thank you, folks. Thanks for sharing this.
Bye.